Anyhow, I'm going to get started. So I've got out my colors. I'm using this Cobra brand, is really good quality of water mixable color. And I've got out this color here is raw sienna, or sorry, that's burnt umber. This is some cad yellow light, Indian yellow. This is a transparent yellow oxide, transparent red oxide, sap green, ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin, and some cobalt blue. And then I put out a little bit of this water mixable oil color. It's a glazing medium. I don't know why it says oil color. It's it's a medium. It's not a color. But anyways, I'm sure someone will let me know why. And I put some in this little egg cup just because I don't use a lot of it. If you use a lot of it, it starts to get really slippery and your canvas gets, it just gets really messy. So I'll use a little bit of that, put a little bit on my brush, and I'm going to block in because I'm just focusing in on this on this one flower here. So I'm going to just get a little bit of this transparent oxide yellow, and I'm going to just put in a little bit of that medium, and I'm going to block like where I want that flower to go. And so I'm just going to block in, and I have some Indian yellow. I might add a bit of that just to get it a little more of a vibrant. All this in here has a lot of yellow, kind of gives it that summery glow. So, and I want to show these petals hanging down. So I want to make sure when I'm roughing it in that I kind of leave spaces for everything to go, especially the important. The whole thing I like about the peony is how, it's such a dramatic flower. So I kind of like that. So I'm putting enough of that Indian yellow in there that, you can really spread it around, but it's not like too much that it's going to be a problem later. So just sort of rough in where it's going to go. So you've got sort of this area where it's all coming sort of like it's like a teacup with a plate underneath is how they describe, roses and whatnot. So you kind of look at it like that, and you look at this as the cup, and this is sort of a plate because they're kind of more flatter and they're opening up more. So those petals. So I think I sort of like that. What I would do now is I want to make sure I get some of those petals up a little bit because I want to really show that they're hanging down, and that's sort of, I'm just using my paper towel to sort of draw it in. And you can do this a number of ways, but so I don't get too confusing, I'm just going to wipe them off. Another way is to draw everything out in the beginning. You could just take a little bit of this and sort of, sketch everything out where your different leaves are going to go. And that's another way to make sure you have everything where you want it to go. So you can do that too. And it's just, all of it's good warm up. So whether you do it or not is fine. It's all good to warm up the brain. My brain's still warming up. So now what I like to do when I'm painting a white flower, I want to mix, I want to get some color around it that's darker value, so you can really see it, kind of pop out. So I'm going to get a little sap green, and a little bit of this red oxide so that the sap isn't so super green, and a little tiny dab of that medium, just so it spreads a little quicker. And some colors spread quicker and better than others, so. But this will really help to get that background in there as quick as you can so that you can really have a contrast. And I'm just using one of those gesso boards. I find the water mixable oil is a little bit harder to spread in a way, so I like to use it either on a really good gesso your canvas before you work on it. And I just use this, if I'm using a canvas, I just use this gesso I get from Michael's, and it just makes it go smoother. But I love the fact that I can rinse my brush using water, and I don't have to have that smelly terp jar, with all the chemicals going into my lungs. Even though I love working with regular oil. That's what I mainly use. But this is just one of the benefits, is that you don't need to have that terp, and it's just so much cleaner. And I'm kind of using a bit of this transparent red oxide in there. So you just want to get that around, and then now you can see how much it's going to help with the contrast there. Okay, now I can start having more fun because I've got kind of all this together. So what I'm going to do now is go back to looking at how do we show white, and white can be tricky for a lot of people. So I'm going to just get some of that white paint and put it right into that mixture of brown oxide and the sap green that I had, just to get sort of a gray color. And I can add a little cobalt blue to it just to mix up sort of a neutral kind of gray color. If it's too cold, just add a little Indian yellow to it. I've kept my palette super simple today. I normally have a lot more color, but I want to keep it simple because then you can, you learn to mix more with this, mix more colors when you use less colors on your palette. But also it's just sort of, if you're just starting out, it's easier to kind of get the supplies and everything you need and make some a little bit more blue. And I'm going to use that kind of in these petals down here. I'm going to start just putting in where there's a dark shadow. I'm going to just put in some of that. I added a little blue to half the pile here, and I'm just going to put in some of those kind of shadow petals. All these, and they're really dark, it's a very high contrast, because I pick photos like that because I like the high contrast with the white flowers. Really shows the shape more. If it is a lot of peony reference photos, they're kind of more, there's not much light and shadow, so it makes it a little harder to paint. So I'm just looking wherever there's a bit of a shadow, I'll kind of put in dab of that. And now I'm gonna make sure to wipe your brush off and get some white. A little bit of that Indian yellow in there. And I'm gonna kind of mix in a bit of that. Might even get a little more. I think before I add white to the center, I'm gonna put a lot more of this darker, that transparent yellow oxide in there and a little more Indian yellow. I want to have a little more paint to work with because I'm going to be making those brush strokes they're going to kind of mix in. So you can start with some of these lighter ones just to get into it. And this is not the lightest white yet, so just looking at the way that there's some highlights on these. And by no means am I trying to do a perfect version. I'm using it just as a guide to work through. It would just be, well, it's not my style of painting, and I don't mind it when people paint realistic, but I kind of I'm an impressionist painter, so I just try to look at what I see and more look at the values and light and dark, and then you can start to add colors that are of the same value, but they just kind of break it up a little. So that's what we'll do as we go. So it's funny because when you paint a white flower, you're not painting using just white. So now that we're in the center, I'm going to go get some of this white paint, maybe a tiny dab of that yellow in there. And I'm just going to kind of smush some of those petals in there just to give it a really loose look there. And you're just seeing kind of the tips of some of these catching the light up here. So you just kind of have to make some various marks up there. Okay, so now it's starting to come along. You notice I've left a lot of these little, let me just zoom in a bit. I've left a lot of the yellows showing through because it really adds a nice kind of glow to it. Oops. That's why you gotta wipe your brush clean. Otherwise you start getting colors that you didn't really want. My paper towel just kind of fell. I use these Viva paper towels mainly because when you do a wipe away, it leaves a really smooth mark, but you don't necessarily need them when you're painting. Sometimes I'll just switch to a cheaper paper towel. So now I'm going to, I can go around and sort of look at these shadows and sort of blend them a little. Give them a little shape just because I put them on kind of quickly, but then I'll go back and you can even get let's see, I have a softer brush. These little blending brushes from Michaels. They're really good. They're Simply Simmons, and it's a very good brand, and I like them. And just if you want to have a softer brush for these gesso boards, I really like these. And this is just a 1/2 inch wash brush. I'll try to leave a link in the description for it. So you can see how I'm just kind of blending those marks a little. And I'll even drag the odd one off into the background just to really loosen it up, and it adds a little bit of kind of action to your painting. And so in the center here, I'm going to get some white and really make a few real bright peony strokes. Sort of, the peony kind of, it unfolds and twirls around, so you kind of go around and kind of show that that peony is opening up there. Now I'll get some real bright white here. Add a tiny bit of Indian yellow or even this yellow, cad yellow light to your white, and it just makes it stand out even more than if you just use pure white. I have to buy some more of this white paint because it's sort of, I haven't used my water mixable oils in a while, and it's a little bit it's a little bit of a strange texture kind of right now, but it's still good, but it's got some sort of graininess to it. So if you're wondering about that, it's just the white paint. I gotta go buy a new tube. Sort of took a break for a while from doing new lessons and new videos, and just because of life being busy and everything, and now I'm really back into it, and I really enjoy the fact I can teach people all over the world because of the internet, so it's kind of fun. So if you're watching, you can always leave me a comment on or a question and I'll be happy to answer it. Sometimes I miss the odd one. And so these petals are kind of curling, this way. And then you've got these ones are curling up. All right, I like the way that looks. Now what you can do is, we've kind of emphasized some of the lighter tips. We can go back in now and look at some of these colors. They're really pretty inside that shadowy area. So what I will do is maybe get a little ultramarine blue and a little bit of this alizarin, and you can see it makes a pretty kind of purple. And another reason I keep my palette simple like this is just so you don't have to go out and buy purples and everything to try to, I have a lot of great colors, but I just, it's good to learn how to mix some of them. And so for this, I used alizarin because it's kind of it creates more of a grayish purple when you mix it with cobalt or ultramarine. If you use like a nice red, like a pink red that looks really pink with these blues, it makes like the most beautiful purple. And I talk about that in some of my lessons. I always tell you all my secrets. So you just have to listen. And then here's some of that purple going in. And I'm just kind of going to blend that in there into the shadows, especially over here where it's a lot cooler looking temperature wise. a few maybe real darker spots in there. And then I can get a little cobalt in there by itself, and you can, you know, add the odd bit of that cobalt blue in there. And then I like to go and sort of, you know, do the same thing. I'll kind of blend it a little so that they kind of fit in. And I'm going to go and add a little bit more of a highlight to this petal here. So just kind of look at your reference photo and kind of go back and forth and see what detail you want to add. But I really enjoy the texture of these. They're very buttery and soft, these Cobra water mixable. And I get these from Blick, and I'll put some, I can put a link in the description for some of these. Put a little more shadow in these ones, and I'm just making the shadow a little bit lighter by mixing some more white in. And when I make my brush stroke for these ones, they're kind of turning up, so I definitely, you know, want to show that. And like these ones are all turning down, so I want to make sure that those So now I've got the flowers sort of in there, and it's looking okay. And I'm gonna now go and add some different colors to some of the leaves. So we get some of this cad yellow light and a little bit of this sap, and you'll see it makes a really nice bright green. And I'll put a few of those, you know, kind of strokes in there. The leaves are kind of long and pointy, so I'll put a few in there like that. And they're gonna go in every which way, so my thing is just to get them kind of going away from the flower a little. And then kind of I'll put a few, just some lines here and there, because there's just a lot going on. And once you get a few of those and different lighter leaves in there, you can get a few that are like this one here is very yellow and bright. I'll get just more of that cad yellow light in there, and maybe put that one up here. Put a little bit of a lighter. A little bit lighter up in there. And then I'm going to get some darker green in there. So get some sap and a little alizarin. That'll really make a dark green, and I'm going to look at where I can sort of cut into the flower. So like I'm going to cut in a bit here and put in some darker green. You don't have to coat the whole space around the lighter leaves. Just put in some shapes that are organic looking and green. And you'll notice now some of the background color, you know, shows up more too. And it's a kind of a nice olivey color. I'll cut in a little here. When you do that, it just adds a real painterly look to the painting. Get more of that sap and more of that green. And cut in a bit of that and down here. Get to show the paint off when you do that. Just adds such a nice happy little kind of brush stroke in there when you do that. Same with here, I'll cut in a little. And I've been holding it with my fingers down here, so kind of coat that a bit. And then I'll go in and sort of get some of that shadow green, put a little bit on this one just so it's not going straight into the side of the flower. You can add a little bit of that shadow and just sort of blend it in with the lighter green. Just so it has a little bit of that. Lifts that white leaf off of it a bit. Okay, I like the way that looks. And then now I'm gonna get some white paint and a little dab of that yellow, which is kind of makes what they call a brilliant white. If you've ever seen that paint in the paint store, that's kind of all it is white with a tiny bit of lemon yellow or cad yellow light. And I'm just gonna push it a little bit over the edge there. Just give it a real kind of a bright pop, and then I'll put a few of those highlights here. Kind of clean up this one here. Like that. Yeah, I'm really gonna have to go buy a new tube of that white paint. So you can go in with some alizarin and just put a little bit of that alizarin right in the middle. It gives it a real zap of color in there. And I just kind of look at where I could use a little more shadow. By looking at my reference photo, I can go in and sort of add a little more of that purple. And so we mixed up basically the colors for the white were, we used a bit of sap and a bit of what is this, transparent yellow oxide, a little bit of this transparent red oxide, and we made that kind of nice gray. And then for the bluey color, we just added a little bit of blue to that same mix to get the more of this bluey green color. And that's how we kind of got here. And I hope that you give it a try. And I love painting peonies, so I'm going to do more, because each time you do one, you get a little better at it, and you kind of just get used to doing it. And I would do it even less controlled. The more you get used to it, the less kind of controlled you have to be. You can kind of just block it in, and you could literally do the same thing pretty quick, But I wanted to make sure you can kind of follow a certain pattern to creating the shadow and the light, because that's what makes those white petals stand out. So I hope that you follow me and like my video, share it with a friend, and I hope most of all that you get painting, and just paint and don't worry about the results. If you paint this and it doesn't work out, you can just try again another day. And each time you paint, you get a little bit better at seeing what you're doing, and it really helps just to practice and just to do something. And I guarantee you, the more you practice, the better you get. So leave me a comment on what you'd like to see me paint next. And I hope you have a great day. Bye.